Hi everyone, my name is Tiffany. Welcome back, or welcome if you've never been here before. Today I want to fill you in on everything that I've been reading this month so far. For the purposes of this video, we're going to say that I've read 21 books because I am still reeling from reading Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan, and I just feel like it's only right to end this video there. And I will be giving you stats at the end of the month. So let's get into it. The first book that I read this month was Lunatic by Onley James. This was a highly anticipated read for me, okay? And I had so much fun with it because of all of the reveals. If you don't know, the Mulvaneys are a family of psychopaths that were plucked out of the system at a very young age by Thomas Mulvaney, adopted and raised to sort of sway their natural instincts towards killing for vigilante justice. And from book one, they are a well-established assassination team. Okay, there's a bit of celebrity centered around the family because of their affluence, money, and strategically placed positions within society. And I'll say, despite their gray matter, they are a very comedic, loving, and intrusive family. So in this book, we get the full scope of Thomas's research, how far out it goes. I don't want to reveal the nature of that. I'll just say it's giving spin-off vibes, okay? And that it's a top secret government program that has placed Archer and Mac in proximity with one another. And when this book starts, they already have a carnal connection, which I thoroughly enjoyed because it helped develop their romance as we're getting all of this intel. Things are moving pretty quickly. I really enjoyed the mission in this because it's centered around Mac's protection, and that nudges Archer's feelings for him because their sexy dynamic, oh, I loved it so much, is one where Mac dominates and devours Archer's feigned disinterest, okay? Feigned disinterest. It's almost like he hates himself for needing Mac to make a mess of him. And Mac just finds it so delicious that he gets a disheveled Archer because no one else gets to see that. And so, again, I loved the mission. We got a lot of cameos from all of our favorite characters. And there is a trigger warning for human trafficking and the full scope of what that can entail. But I loved how we had a darker theme. And she again was able to weave that in with these swoony, memorable moments, like them being aligned for being misunderstood in their families, loved, okay, but also ostracized, and how they both want more than the physical, and they have to sort of learn how to communicate, which places them to put their cards on the table and be vulnerable. I loved those moments. The setups for what's to come were everything. I mean, I need Maniac, okay? I need Thomas's book now. I cannot wait for that. I'm upset that I have to wait till January. I rated this a 4. I had a really good time with it. I just need Manic, okay? I just need Manic in my hands right now. Next, I read, let me look, because I always try to like remember, but I have the reading update. We'll just pretend like we have 21. The Earl on the Train by Kerrigan Byrne. This is a Victorian Rebels novella, and it features 2 characters from The Duke with the Dragon Tattoo. So I went into this already knowing that the hero Sebastian has already held Veronica captive. And in this book, he is a newly appointed heir, once pirate, who's out for revenge. And quite literally, like, he's outside on top of a freaking train, scaling down into freaking windows. He's ready to kill his target. And he finds the one woman that's made him feel anything, something other than lust. And I loved how Veronica is not at all surprised that she's meeting him in this way. She's stronger now. She's a lot more sure of herself. And I think that this novella just showcased how to write emotional freaking steam, being that Veronica survived the domestic violence and sexual abuse from her late husband, and he worships her, is so patient. It softens him into a man that he can't recognize but desperately wants to be. In this book, she is working for the man that he wants to kill as a seamstress for his daughter. And so she's a bit of a social justice warrior. She sees the tone of what she endured. And so I love the plot with that. This was really good, okay? And I'll say I wouldn't read it unless you've read Victorian Rebels, because their heated connection, the awakening that kind of starts for Veronica in this book, stems from a very sexy, steamy, voyeuristic scene, and that is further developed in the novella. So Sebastian, being the only man to really elicit passion in her in this novella, has more of a heated, hateful edge to it that I thoroughly enjoyed. So, loved it. I rated it a 4. Next, I ended up reading Cassie Ment, his Muse. I think this is her newest release and her newest novella series. This was a stalker romance between a merch girl, Rhodey, and the songwriter for a band. Of course, they're on tour together where he's obsessively watching her, never approaches, yet she's become accustomed to his gaze, and she misses it when they're off tour. And when she's home, she starts stalking her stalker, okay, until she feels as though she's being watched again. And she starts to try to lure him in. This was bonkers, okay? It was smutty, and I rated it a 3. It was fun. Next I read, let me refer to my reading because I'm always trying to remember. A Love Letter to Whiskey by Kandi Steiner. This book was beautiful, and it ached from the slow-mo moment that B sees Jamie and dares to claim something for herself. It's like fate continues to throw obstacles in between their connection. The meet cute that is seemingly supposed to be hers is claimed by her best friend, where, you know, she's sort of forced to be sidelined and be happy for her best friend. Also note how on the surface, Jamie and her best friend are really the perfect match, yet beneath that surface, she is really warring with the deep connection that they have, and she's selfish enough to investigate it. And this was like the angst of freaking life, because it starts from high school and it just follows them throughout their lives. And I loved how she likened him to whiskey, how she nicknamed him so. And as Jamie ages, so does the aging process of whiskey through her metaphors. And I just thought that that was so beautiful, how it's used to describe her descent into betrayal and secrets in order to just get a swig of him. And I think this is a book that really explored the gray area and complexities of cheating, where, oh, yes, it was toxic, but it almost felt inevitable, and it really challenged the dichotomy of right and wrong. Oh, the undulations of angst in this book, okay? How they just can't seem to align in a non-forbidden, non-disruptive way to be together. Oh my gosh. And then the way that she just describes her need to wean herself off the dependence of him, like as if it was alcoholism. This book just felt like the kind of book where something else takes over. It felt like the book of a career. I am absolutely sold on Kandi Steiner. This is a 5-star read, okay? I'm not gonna it's a 5-star read, and I'm going to continue to read her throughout the rest of the year. I'm sold on Kandi Steiner. It was so freaking beautiful. It cut deep, okay? This cut me. Next, I read Sweet Like Poison by Julia Wolf. This is a part of her Savage You series, which is a spin-off from her high school bully romance series. And so this is an opposites attract between an ice queen, former mean girl, flawless, seemingly unfazed Elena, okay? And Lachlan, he is this big, brawny, I loved when Julia described his belly as soft, like he's got meat, he's a man, and he's also a rancher. He's only at school to get his degree and go back home and run the family business. And so they end up living next door to each other, and he's captivated by her pristine Disney princess-like features, but he's not trying to get distracted. And he also has made a lot of assumptions about her character that she's noticed, okay? And the growth of Elena in this book. I met her in Start a Fire, okay? Where she was a manipulative menace. And here she is strong, sure of herself, and freaking fierce. And she has been harboring and just trudging through the trauma of her sexual assault, as well as the guilt and glee of being free of her ex-boyfriend. This one really read very counter to all of the others that I've read within the Savage universe, because of the fully developed backstories that informed how they loved and engaged with one another. The way that they are aligned in this book was absolutely beautiful, and how, it just starts out with this heated, angry kiss, at least on Lachlan's part. I just love that reluctant, ravenous snap between them that turns into steam that Elena can actually enjoy for the first time since her assault. And she doesn't know what to make of this. It's a big moment, and he's trying to play it down. And of course, they just end up leaning into it. His acts of care were just so luscious. He was such a freaking Southern gentleman. I loved it. The way that he woos and shows up for her even after he messes up just got me in this book. And Elena will not disappoint you as a heroine, okay? She stands firm in what she wants, what she knows that she deserves, even if it hurts. And I just loved this. This was, it's not quiet and it's not timid, but it has like this swoony quality that I just, it was really good. Like this one is different. If you haven't read any of these, I'm going to tell you, I skipped to this book. I will be reading Bright Like Midnight during the Twisted and Taboo Readathon, and that's the first in this series. I skipped to this book and I was just fine. This was a standout romance, and it's Y freaking A. Sorry if you read YA. I'm just saying, it's like when I picked up Kristen Callahan, I was not expecting to get what I got from the hookup. That's all I'm saying. Okay, it's standout. I'll continue putting my foot in my mouth. Next, I read Nicky the Driver by Kate C. Wells. This book rocked me in terms of the trigger warnings for disordered eating, and I do think that this representation was done well, since I can relate to some of Zita's ritualistic behavior in this book. So it was kind of like horrific for me to read, but yes. I also appreciated that her healing isn't wrapped up nicely in a pretty bow, okay? Because transmuting something that's become debilitating but has also served as a survival tactic isn't just upended by a couple therapy sessions, and I really enjoyed that about this book, even though it was difficult to read her going through that. So anyway, this is a Mafia romance. It's also a forced marriage where the couple that murdered Zita's father is forcing her to marry Nicky when she's already engaged to somebody else, and she really agrees to do it to save her younger sister, who at this point in the book hasn't fully transitioned, but there's this really sweet moment between them where she's helping her take off her makeup because the stakes of her getting caught is death in the Mafia. And so she agrees and goes to live with Nicky, and it's really just about her being very curious about his psychopathy, as well as beginning to need his obsession and desire, or at least flourish underneath it. And since she's forced into proximity with him, her demons have a spotlight and are laid bare. And it was just the devotion of Nicky for me in this book the reveals on how far that went, it just made me freaking swoon. Like, and how they forged this life together, it was action-packed, it was emotional, okay? But I bought it and I really enjoyed this book. I rated it a 4.5. Next I read, Forbidden Mafia Prince by Brooke, Blaine, and Ella Frank. Ooh, this is an captive Mafia romance. It is the first in a duet that I believe could have been one book. I'm just gonna keep it real here, okay? Because the HGA and the build of the romance is really in the second book. The first ends in a cliffhanger. And, you know, the second picks up right where it left off. You could have just joined them. I'm just saying. Anyway, in the first book, we meet Luca. He is a resident in a medical program. He's lived a normal life. And he is kidnapped by Dom and learns that he is the sole heir of the Italian mafia's rival. And I will say that this has an enemies to passionate defiance and need for dominance between them. It's a reluctant fall, being that Dom, of course, is closeted. He's the heir to his throne. And Luca doesn't know what to make of the feelings that are coming out of the man who incessantly aims to kill him. And it's like very dark in that way. I will say that Luca is more emotionally astute than Dom, and he recognizes what's happening between them. And again, doesn't trust that won't make Dom want to kill him more. And so this first one ends off on a cliffhanger, and the second one picks up right where it left off. And I will say that is where we get our romance. That is where we get the dismantling of a traditional mafia and conversations centered around legacy that stem further from reproducing. And I really enjoyed those notes within this duet. So I had a good time with it. The first one I rated a 3.5. The second I rated a 4. It could have been one book. Next, Irresistible Pug Boy. Irresponsible Pug Boy by Saxon James. Dex and Trip are both NHL players and they play for the Vegas team. This is a friends to lovers, okay? Where Trip is out and Dex is in an off and on toxic relationship. At the beginning of this book, it is off. And there is pining and unrequited feelings on the part of Trip, where he is really forced to set boundaries that Dex makes it really hard for him to do because of the ease in their connection. At the beginning of this book, Dex is going through a breakup and he's trying to understand why he couldn't give commitment to his ex-girlfriend when the ease and connection between him and Dex is just fortified. So he has the great idea of doing a pretend wedding so that he can maybe get the jitters out of it that spirals completely out of control to where they are forced to be fake married. And therein lies the delicious enlightening, because Trip really learns that he needs to start protecting himself and laying down those boundaries, and Dex starts to come alive to his feelings for his best friend. It is so sweet, and it's also really freaking sexy. I mean, the sort of teach me element that's within this. Also, Dex coming alive to the plight that Trip and all of the other out and proud NHL players have been dealing with. I just loved how Trip was really patient with Dex. He has this sort of insecurity about being dense, and yet I think that childlike approach to things and just being so open really allows him to lean into their connection. This was so freaking cute. I rated it a 4.5. Next, I read Cybersex by Sweetestsorrows. This is a Harry Potter fanfic. I have the link to it through Archive of Our Own in the description box. Ooh, I saw this posted on Instagram and quickly ran, because in this book, Hermione goes by Medusa on her OnlyFans, where she wears lingerie and reads books aloud. And Draco has a voice kink, okay? She's masked. He doesn't know that it's her. In fact, in this fanfic, I kind of enjoyed that all of the characters are the same, yet they don't have the binding influence of Hogwarts. So they don't know each other. They don't have that prior enemy relationship, animosity. And ooh, I just thought this was a lot of fun because he's been sinking his inheritance into her OnlyFans. And one day when he goes to class, he recognizes her by her unruly hair and, of course, her incessant question answering. And it's their romance. It's sexy. It's hot. There's pegging. There's dominance. There's submission. There is all of the sort of like college feel of exploration between them. And then it's bolstered by these very real, mature feelings. Him bringing her into his family. He still is Draco within this world. He still has the insurmountable... I apologize if you're getting an abrupt jump cut. My camera died and I had a bit of an intermission on my Instagram stories. Full disclosure, I'm filming this right before leaving to go to Wanderlust in San Antonio and I'm not fully packed. And also realizing I'm pretty long-winded, so I'm gonna run through the last few of these books here. I apologize for the housekeeping. But I think I was talking about Draco and the weight of his legacy. It's very much known, but Hogwarts isn't in this world, so I rated it a 4. I also read Astrid by KD Robichaux. This is a Club Alias novella, and I love that series. This is Neil and Astrid's book. Neil is Doc. He is the one that everyone goes to if they would like a membership to unpack trauma, to get education. And she has a past of struggling with a domestic violent relationship, and it's their romance. They're forced into proximity because he moves her into his home, and it's just luscious. This is her very much happy and in love, a mother, but she also hasn't taken any time for herself, so it's date night. This is a hot romp. I rated it a 3, and I love this series. After that, I believe I read, I want to get it right because it was stunning, but it also went over my head, and I had to go back to the beginning after finishing it, just out of intellectual ego, because I was like, this is like above me. Silver in the Wood by Emily Tesh. This is a fantasy. It's also a romance. I do have the second novella that has the HEA, but I just have to go back to it. It read like a stream of consciousness. It reminded me of when I was reading Persuasion by Jane Austen, in that very skillfully, whenever Tobias, who is living within the woods, he's of the woods, their protector, and something else, that Silver, the new neighbor and resident within this town, who is investigating the folklore of the land, sort of pokes and prods at, flirts a little bit. Tobias takes him in the beginning of the book. Their meet cute is quite probing and hospitable. And it was very apparent that the language was different when Tobias was talking to humans as opposed to some of the other entities that pop up. There's a bit of a mystery going on. This is a duet and there is an HEA in the second book, but I haven't gotten to it. But this was just very atmospheric and whimsical and a little dark as well. So I absolutely loved it because of the challenge that it gave me to really like focus on what she was doing with words, like how it embodied and made sense as to why it was written in that way because of what Tobias is. Anyway, I rated this a 4, and I do plan on reading the second book. I just have to get ready for it. Like, I don't know if it's because I hadn't slept or what, but it just took me a minute to really key in to what she was doing. Anyway, I said I was gonna wrap this up quickly. I'm sorry. The Madhouse by Liza James. This was a 5-star read, new to me author. I've got 2 of her books on my October TBR because of this. This is a dark, and I mean dark. The trigger warnings are just gonna alert the algorithm on here, but you need to know it's sapphic, it's step-sibling. There are trigger warnings for attempted animal harm within the first 10%, child abuse, molestation, self-harm, murder, gore, sexual assault. This is all descriptively depicted on the page. to illustrate the immense trauma that they endured when they were children. It is indescribable. It really is. And they've been in separation for a while since Cedar got out. Yet she left Fee behind, and Fee has been resentful since. Cedar has been harboring that guilt, so when she gets the call that her sister is being let out of the hospital for murdering their parents, she arrives and takes her in. I'm not going to go into the nature of their upbringing because the entire book is really centered around revealing and uncovering that to Fee as well. And there was just so much for her to work through in this book that there was a moment where I was like, how are we going to get a romance in the way that Liza James pulls this off? Was just I loved it. It's not easy to read, but it was hard-hitting. It's compelling. They really fight their connection because of the taboo element that, in my opinion, really stems from their conditioning. After you get the reveals on how they were raised, that step-sibling element really doesn't seem so taboo. And there is a gut-wrenching and complete drop into a cliffhanger at the end of this book. I mean, it's a harsh cut, okay? It's a harsh cut, and I'm still rating it a 5. I need that second book though, okay? So this definitely moved me. The writing, just the way that she puts words to their connection and how she makes this romance work was really stand out to me. Absolutely impeccable. Next, I read Craving Khiva by Zoe Draven. This was a gem. This is a recommendation that I got while I was on the book tour retreat, and I wanted to run through all of the recommendations that I got from my friends before I faced them in San Antonio, so I did it in the nick of time, and I absolutely loved Craving Khiva. I rated this 5 stars as well. Obviously, this is an alien romance where Khiva is enslaved. I'm going to call it that. He is working in an illegal brothel. He has been displaced from his planet. In fact, his entire species has, due to war. And he and his people were preyed upon because of their species' natural ability to produce arousal in other beings. And so Eve is our heroine that ends up seeking his services in order to come out of her shell. I loved her as a character. She is considered a spinster on this planet. She's also not the ideal beauty, being curvy with darker hair. And she decides to go to this brothel to lose her virginity as a means to just come out of her shell. She's afraid that she's going to isolate and be alone and not take the risks that she believes her late father would have wanted for her. And so she goes, and they're freaking meet cute in this book. The way that she's counter to all of his other clients, the questions that she asks of him, her concern for him, the fact that she treats him like a person and not a whore, his words, just moves him. Plus he has this very instinctual pull towards her, and he's trying to patiently pace her through the exploration that she's hoping to have, and it is difficult. I just love this because it turns into a full-fledged romance where she takes on the plight of his displaced species and uncovers the egregious atrocity of the enslavement of his people. Oh, it is so good. I leapt right into the next book, which is a continuation of their HEA, where they have some challenges that stem from his legacy, the future of his people, and to take down the madam that preyed upon them. Oh my God, it's so freaking good. And I was like talking about this on Instagram. I just love the themes that alien romances are able to hit. I started Sohut's Journey by A.G. Wilde after that. And this is about a heroine that's kidnapped, okay, from Earth. She escapes the freaking ship that crashes. She survives on an alien freaking planet for a year, and they're still hunting her. So they send in Sohut. And Sohut believes that he is hunting for an animal. He's not expecting a sentient being. And so when he finds that out, he completely course corrects. And reading them come together was just so luscious. Because they're aiming to survive, there are acts of care, there are meditations on humanity. It's action-packed, it's fast-paced, they're building trust, it's sexy. Oh my gosh, this book was so good. I rated this a 4.5. This was from Avery. I was on an alien kick, and I just loved the existential themes of humanity that came from these. Then I followed that up with The Roommate Arrangement by Saxon James. I got this rec from Caitlin, the Love Librarian. And I love Saxon James. I love an MM romance. This follows Payne. He's a recent divorcee, and after 12 years of marriage, he found out not only was his husband cheating on him, but doing it very publicly on his OnlyFans. And so he's at a place in his life, 40 years old, leaving his job, relocating to his hometown that he never really thought he'd be in, sleeping on the couch of his best friends. It's uncomfortable, but it's a start to a new chapter. And his best friend's brother, Beau, offers a room in his home, free of charge. Okay, he just wants a little light cleaning in exchange, so that he can have a place to be more comfortable. Now, Beau has been secretly pining for Payne since they were growing up, and he's a little nervous about being this close into proximity with him. Yeah, I loved this romance because Beau is a little socially awkward, he's quirky, and he really wants to amend that. So it turns into him asking Payne to help him basically change who he is. And Payne is so endeared by him, he refuses to do so. They do a little bit of almost like rehearsal dating. It leads to feelings. And I loved how honest, up until the point it comes out, like how honest and forthcoming Beau is about what he wants and how he is willing to take the hit emotionally to have him physically. I just love that because it's challenging for Payne, okay? And I don't know why I'm like this. Like the moments where we get that shift, where we get that tipping point where Payne starts becoming a little jealous, okay, and possessive. I was living. I'm like, you're helping him get this confidence. Let him use it. And that jealousy is illegible to Beau. And I loved this romance. I thought it was so freaking sweet. And it was swoony. I love forced proximity. I love an MM mutual pining situation. I rated it a 4.5. Let's see, what did I read after that? Let me see. Next, I read Into the Heartless Woods by Joanna Ruth Mayer. Oh my gosh. This was atmospheric. This was YA as well. It was dark, it was fantasy, and it was also a romance without a lot of steam. So coming from me, and I rated this a 5, I just loved the writing in this and how it almost gave me Tim Burton vibes in that it's dark. I mean, there's a lot of death, yet it had that sort of haunting innocence to it because the tree siren, who was created to lure souls with her song, snatch them and feed them into a pitless, when it comes to assuming powerful witch. She longs for a soul. And when Owen stumbles across her after going after his younger sister, in order to protect her, he's willing to sacrifice himself. And that is a quality that she has yet to see in humans. And her aim to not cause harm is so counter to what he's experienced, being that his mother was lost to the woods. And it is their romance. And her chapters, because she's nameless in the beginning, are almost written in verse. And just, the plot that's happening externally is just above and beyond them. It's an ancient war of scorned love. The romance between them is obviously forbidden, and yet it's just so sweet and timid and the conversations that are centered around what makes someone human, moral, and good, what she's willing to sacrifice in order to have him in the ending, baby. There is an HEA. It was a little touch and go there for a minute, okay? But I just thought this was absolutely beautiful. I'm supposed to be wrapping these up quickly. I'm sorry. But I loved this. I loved this. Next, I read Seraph by Mayne. She made this work for me. I'm just gonna like throw that out there. And it was touch and go there for a while, because in this monstrous world, monsters vary in degrees in terms of sentience. And Seraph is not only like battered and feral and dangerous, he's the most monstrous looking of them all. I mean, the hand really gave me pause here. And in the beginning of this book, he's being held at a raiders camp after being rescued from an insane monster collector, and Lilac is guarding him. And just the kindness of Lilac and the ability for him to see Seraph as a being and not just a monster was really the start of a slow and tedious journey of healing. And there is a major reveal about Seraph that made this click and work for me. I thought that was clever, and I definitely needed it because I kept wondering, how is this gonna work? We also get to see our faves, okay? Wynn is up in here with Danny, okay? We get cameos. Everyone's at the camp. I also liked seeing Gloam sort of play like a father type role, because Lilac is a very practical character. When he was within the city before becoming a raider and venturing out on his own, he was a sex worker, and he very clearly saw the scam and exploitation of the people within the cities, and rightfully harbored mistrust of the government, and has been used to doing things on his own. And since he's been in this raiders camp, he's the go-to monster killer. There's something about it that doesn't faze him, and so he is a pivotal member within this camp, yet he's also in isolation. And so while guarding Seraph, he makes a connection with him, especially after the reveals. And it is very like difficult and melancholy in the beginning. I mean, just the cruelty that he suffered and his believed to be fate. But she made it work, okay? She really did. And I have to thank Jen, because she sent me like a different illustration of Seraph, and I was like, this works, okay? Maybe I'll post it. I'll see if I put it in the video. But I was like, this I can get behind, okay? I can get into that. But I really like this. It takes some while. It's a slow burn, long journey to healing, and it's the thickest book within this series. But I had no doubt, I just didn't know how she was gonna pull it off, and it's done in a very clever way. Next, because I'm long-winded, Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldre. I got this read from Riley Marie, and it is a low angst cozy fantasy, and I just loved it because it was a fantasy that wasn't centered around the quest, but an adventurer that's ready to start a new chapter and hang up her sword. And it's really about her starting her coffee shop, which is a gnomish tradition within this world that she discovered during her travels. So in the town that she chooses to settle in, they don't know what coffee is. They call it bean water. So she's really starting from the ground up in terms of building her business. It has a found family aspect. She gets a carpenter to build out the shop. She meets a sweater-wearing bookish succubus, has a small little romance with her who ends up being an amazing business partner. There's a baker. I mean, all of the additions to the menu will make you need sips and snacks while you read this. I am not joking, okay? You're gonna want a Cinnabon, something hot to drink. It really is a cozy read, and it was just so much fun. It is low angst, almost like slice of life. I loved it. I rated this 4.5 stars. Like, it's just what I needed. And after reading this cozy fantasy I read Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan, and she completely rocked me. This was the best reading experience that I've had all year, and I read Manacled, okay? Manacled took my life for 3 days, and this is a second chance romance between a divorced couple. Yasmin and Josiah co-parent, and they co-run a business, a fusion soul food restaurant called Grits in Atlanta. I love how Black this was. I also enjoyed that the epic love story between them is still immensely felt, and that we got to get a glimpse of it. We got to see what they're convinced they can never get back to, because their family was pummeled by trauma. It has affected the mental health of both of them, yet it manifested in different ways. And they kind of reminded me of like two magnets that are meant to snap together, but when you put them on opposing sides, you know, there's that like invisible repelling force, and it feels odd because the pair belongs together. This really felt like they were slowly inching towards each other, because the trauma and the grief within this book caused Yasmin to turn away from Josiah. You need to know that there are trigger warnings for grief. And for those of you who think that trigger warnings are spoilers, I'll give you a chance to, you know, skip ahead or skip out. Thank you for joining. But I think that you need to know that there are trigger warnings for miscarriage in this book. And the way that Kennedy Ryan puts words to trauma and healing, grief, depression. I mean, there's a way that she's able to draft trauma spatially that gave us a storied history in a few lines, while also showcasing Yasmin's growth. She has an amazing group of friends in this book. There's an enriching Black community. I love how their children played a huge role in this romance, which is really personal for me because my parents too had a second chance, and I could relate to Deja. I was her exact same age when they were going through their journey. And so I was just shook and rocked because they're co-owners. They are placed into forced proximity, and you know, she's gonna take you through the holidays. This is your autumn book, okay? This is your autumn read. She's going to take you through the holidays. She's going to grip and rock you, but give you recipes at the end, okay? It's just absolutely beautiful how they come together, learn to trust, and work through what broke them. No one's doing it like her. While I was reading this, I instinctually felt like I am reading the romance writer of our freaking time. I mean, it is just, it's impeccable, okay? So that's the autumnal book, okay? That's all I'm gonna say. I have had one of those recipes. I was afraid to post it. I mean, it's absolutely delicious. There's more than one, okay? I wish I could feature it next month since I have some vlogs planned, but we'll save it for November because I don't want to be the one. But this is it, okay? It's it. I want to thank you for joining me. Please consider subscribing and sticking around. I have to rush off and catch a flight. I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.